Hello, Realtors. Welcome to the SCR Legal Podcast. We've got a special guest star today, Jennifer Feliciano and Tiara. Please introduce yourselves.
Hola, everyone. I am Jennifer Feliciano. I am so thrilled to be here to do a podcast with Byron and Tiara. I am originally, was born in the Dominican Republic, and actually I was raised on a farm. And I came to the United States when I was 4 years old. To New York, and now I'm Southern. I've been here for 27 years, and I've also been in real estate, because as soon as I came to South Carolina, I got into real estate. And from there on, I have been very active within my community. There's been a lot of things and a lot of changes I've seen within the last few years, and I really wanted to be involved. And now I am the chairperson for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, which I love because I get to work with Tiara on that, with the fair housing issues and topics. And at the same time, I'm also the president-elect for my local Realtor Association at CCRA.
Thank you for being here, Jennifer. I am Tiara Pitts. I'm your Director of Fair Housing, and I work with Jennifer as the staff liaison to your state Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. And thank you for that introduction. You are really involved. So how did you even get into real estate?
Well, like I said, when I first got here to South Carolina 27 years ago, I didn't really know much about real estate and the whole profession of it. But I wanted to do something where I had time to be, because I had two small children at that time, and I wanted to be with my kids. And I wanted something to give me the flexibility of being involved with my kids and their schools. And at the same time, I figured, hey, I would sell houses because I loved looking at houses. And boy, did I learn quickly that, it's fun looking at houses, but there's so much more involved than just that part of it. There's so many things you have to know. And also, just learning how to deal with people. But after all this time, I absolutely love it and continue to grow every single day within my profession.
What's your favorite thing about being a realtor?
Oh, talking. I love talking. I love talking to people. But mainly, I also love to educate, because there's so many people out in our world who don't really know or understand how they can start building wealth and generational wealth, because they may have not been involved in something where their families bought a house. They just don't know where to start. So I absolutely love to be able to educate people on the process of it. And then I have the advantage that I'm bilingual. So that is another big thing, because I wanted to also make sure that everyone understands in their native language of Español. So that makes me an even more special agent, I think, to just be part of this amazing organization.
Super. And kind of tell about your business. What's your brokerage name? Where do you operate? What's kind of your marketplace?
I am with Coldwell Banker Realty, and we are a large organization, and we have offices here in the Columbia area and in the North Carolina area as well. As I said, I've been in it for 27 years, and I am just, I work in the Northeast office, actually, although I live in Lexington. But it just goes to show you can drive anywhere and be in any of the offices, because I think it helps me also get to know all my areas. I do concentrate a lot on the Elgin, Camden, and Northeast side. And I also do a lot in the Lexington side, just because, as I said, I live there. But I really, as I tell everyone, I am a realtor all the way from Batesburg and Lexington to Camden, and all the way to the town of Kershaw, and everywhere in between. So I'm pretty versatile, and try to make sure I stay within my areas where I'm comfortable, and just to make sure I know my product when I'm out there with any clients.
And what's some of the advantages that you've saw from working at a larger brokerages? Are there trainings or things? What are the resources that are given to you by working at a large brokerage?
Well, working with a large brokerage, especially like with Coldwell Banker, we do have a lot of resources that they are always that are part of our associate. Well, not some of our company. We also have a lot of training. We also, like today, I was at a training where we, as more mature or realtors that have been in the business a lot longer, are also showing our techniques and how we do our business with other agents within our office. So we're always training, we're always learning. Another thing is that we also stay updated on what's going on within our company, especially because it's a worldwide company. So it is a great advantage for me to be within this company.
You mentioned your involvement in the local and state association. How did you, because you were practicing real estate and then you decided to take on this extra work because it's volunteer. How did you decide to get involved with your local, with CCRA and SCR?
Yeah, so I'm proud to serve in both association, my local and my state one, because you're right. It is a volunteer position, and a lot of times people forget that it is volunteer. They're like, "Oh, you're not doing real estate anymore. Now you're on to other positions," and I just let them know I am here to serve, continue to grow, but mainly to serve other agents because there aren't, especially for me, there aren't that many Latino agents in our profession. So I saw a need where I thought that it would be great for me to also show other agents cultural differences that there are within just a Hispanic market, and then at the same time just learn from everything that we get from our local and state associations and be able to share it with clients and just be a more versatile agent.
And what are some, if an agent or a brokerage is wanting to expand their market and work with more Spanish, Hispanic consumers, what are some advice that you can give them about working with the Hispanic community?
Well, I would let people know that on our state association, a group of us got together, a group of Hispanic agents got together with our association because we've been advocating for many years that we needed a Spanish translated contract and documents. And guess what? We have it now. So that's awesome because I was privileged to be part of that, where we were able to make sure that all the documents that everyone shares in English are also available in Spanish. Now, Byron, got a question for you. We have a Spanish translated contract. And I just want to make sure that people understand, because sometimes, well, they may not be aware of it. So I wanted them to be sure that they're aware that all the documents are there in Spanish. There's a Spanish library. But if someone wanted to use that Spanish contract, does their buyer have to sign that contract?
Yeah, so that's kind of a trick question because, lawyers can argue what English means in our standard form. So what you all did when you translated, you created an explanation of the contract, but it's not really a contract, it's an explanation. So they wouldn't sign it. It's a way for them to understand what the English version says. But if they went to court, they would have signed the English version, and the judge is going to look at the agreement in English. So that's the thing that comes up on the hotline a lot of times, where people are trying to do the right thing with fair housing, but they'll get somebody come in and maybe English is a second language. They're weak at English. Maybe Spanish is their first language. But maybe they want to rely on like a minor child to translate. That always makes me nervous. So for the realtors that aren't bilingual, what are some things that some advice you would give them? Could they hire you to come and help, or could they refer clients to you? What are some ideas?
Yeah, to me, I always think, as you said, it is scary when sometimes people don't know and they would get a minor child who doesn't, as a person, they don't understand the terminology of real estate. And then now they have a minor child trying to translate these things. Yes, it is easier if you would refer it to a Spanish-speaking agent. I think that is your safest bet. And if not, then, maybe try to call if you are friends with someone who does speak the language that you need. Call them and maybe they'll be able to jump in and help explain something. And I've done that quite a few times for agents that I know who want to make sure that they're getting the right message across to whoever that person that they're speaking with. And if not, I'll be more than happy to take that referral.
And another thing that we've worked on together is your relationship in NAHREP. So can you explain what is NAHREP and how people can be a part of that?
Yes, well, NAHREP stands for National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. And they're an organization that are dedicated to advancing sustainable Hispanic homeownership through education and through advocacy. So they're a huge organization, and we don't have a chapter here. We used to have one back in 2018, and I am working on trying to reestablish that chapter here again. So whoever is interested in joining me, I would absolutely love it. I need 10 strong realtors and about 5 strong lenders to be able to start that chapter here. But right now I do belong to the chapter out of Charlotte, and I tell you, they have so many great business rallies, just different educational sessions, always to help you understand the resources that you need in order to deal with that Hispanic buyer, to help them through any resources with a lot of the banks now, for example, have Spanish documents for their lender documents. And then there's a lot of people who are getting into the business in all the industries of insurance, lenders. We've got a lot more of the Hispanic realtors. So, we're all here to help, and we all just want for that group, the Hispanic group, or any group, to just be able to start their process in generational wealth. Because if they don't know, we're here to help be that next person to help them get to that point.
So what is the business aspect of working with Hispanic home buyers? How can that promote someone's bottom line as a brokerage and as a business?
Well, as many people are aware, the Hispanic market is one of the largest market that has been growing for the last few years. And by the year of 2035, the Hispanic market will be the largest minority homeowner group buying homes. So it is very important for every business to pay attention to that dynamic and that group of home ownership. Not even home ownership, any and all products, because the Hispanic market continues to grow.
Awesome. So now we can move on to some questions. Jennifer, you have some questions for us attorneys today.
I do.
So what do you have for us?
Well, I wanted to ask, every single time I look at the podcast, I get a lot of great information, but I thought that today I have the privilege of sitting here with both of you guys because we were doing an RPAC fundraiser event, and I won the auction of doing a podcast with you. So I'm so excited over this and thrilled to be here. So I figured I wanted to do it a little bit more on questions and, like a little game show kind of style. So I wanted to ask, Byron, can you tell me a little bit about the post-settlement, no MLS comp, how do agents get compensated?
Right. So the offer of compensation is no longer on the multiple listing service. So that means you have to create an agreement in writing so you can be paid. The buyer can pay you through their buyer agency agreement. If you're on the listing side, obviously you can get paid from the seller of the listing agreement. And then we've got an SCR 120 compensation agreement. So a lot of times when buyer agents go, they can communicate with the listing agent, and either the seller or the listing agent can agree to pay them using the SCR 120 compensation agreement. And also we have in our contract SCR 310 the ability for the seller to pay a portion of the buyer's transaction costs, which includes their buyer brokerage. So Tiara, on the hotline, what are some ways that you explain to folks how they can get paid?
So there's 2 different business models that I've been hearing about. One is pretty similar to how it was before, which is where a seller has authorized a listing company to share their co-op with the buyer's agent. So in that scenario, it would be between the listing company. So you would check that box, and then between the buyer's brokerage company. And of course, this is going from company to company, and then they filter it out to their agents. So in that scenario, it would be the two companies signing that compensation agreement. Another business model is where a listing company is not participating in cooperating compensation. So they have the seller directly. So you will check the box seller, and then between the seller and the buyer's brokerage. So the signers of that agreement will be the seller and the buyer's brokerage company. And that could be the broker or the agent. That's by company policy as well. So it's two different business models. We don't make any determination on which one is right, which one is wrong. They are both compliant, and it's just a matter of how your company is choosing to do business. Sometimes we get arguments, well, my company's business model is X and yours is Y. What do we do? And it's like, you have to work that out. You have to come to some decision that's in the best interest of your client. You don't want to let just a policy stop you from being able to work together and get what's in the best interest of your client, whether that's, as the buyer buying a home or the seller selling a home. So try to, make that work, and call us and we'll tell you, walk you through it. But a lot of things is just working it out and trying to do what's in the best interest of your clients.
Which kind of brings me to a question I would like to ask Byron. A little scenario, and and I'm not sure of all the details, but what if I have a listing agreement and I have already negotiated with the seller to get a X amount of compensation, and I've spoken to that seller to pay X amount, if they've agreed to pay X amount to the buyer whenever we get a contract. And then all of a sudden we do have an offer that comes in, and that amount that the buyer's agent is asking for is less than that amount that the seller was kind of aware. Who gets that extra amount? That's the difference between from what that agent asked and what the seller thought that they would be paying.
Yeah, that's a big question we've been getting on the hotline, Jennifer. I thought it like an overage, like you were talking about, an extra, or, kind of a slang term. It's like gravy, right? So the idea is the settlement is the buyer knows what they're paying, what their buyer agent's getting paid. So on the buyer agreement, it has an amount. Say it says X percent. And so say the listing agreement says you can offer up to X plus 1%. So the buyer agent, and Tiara was talking about the different business model. The buyer agent's either getting paid from the listing broker or the seller for that, X percent, because that was in their buyer agency agreement. And that leaves that X plus 1 leaves 1%. So what we recommend on the hotline is buyer agents can never, NAR, as legal has said, you can't increase your buyer agreement just to soak that money up. You can only amend your buyer agreement for different services or increased services. So your buyer agreement says X percent, that's the max you're going to get. On the listing agent side, let's say it said X plus 1%. So say there's 1% extra gravy, overage. You need to have a conversation with your seller and say, look, they're only asking for X percent. That's in their buyer agreement. And then work with the seller. Most likely under the Code of Ethics and License Law, you're trying to get that money back to your seller. So you might even amend the listing agreement to X percent for this particular buyer. Because the idea of these lawsuits is you're trying to protect the consumer, the buyer consumer and the seller consumer. And then the flip side can happen on the buyer side, right? So say there's extra on a buyer side, like a bonus, like a new home that's come up on the hotline. So what we've recommended, what we're looking at is there's some SCR forms that are being looked at now. The Forms Committee's done a lot of work. The Executive Committee's looked at it. So stay tuned for maybe some new compensation agreements and some updates to the buyer agreement, where you could say in your market, a lot of the builders, or if the buyer, your buyer, and say, hey, Byron, this neighborhood you're looking at, a lot of times there's a bonus. So we can add that to the buyer agreement. You could even do that now with a lawyer. You could say my buyer agency agreement is for X percent, and Byron, you're my buyer. You authorize me to accept a bonus of up to, say $1,000. So it's clear. I know I pay you X percent. If the new home builder is offering a $1,000 bonus, I've already agreed to that, but it's not in our buyer agreement right now. So you'd have to add that into that. And then you could say, Byron, if there's no bonus, then you don't pay me that. Or I could say, hey, Jennifer, I don't like that. I want to use that bonus. Maybe we negotiate for upgraded countertops or something like that for me. So you want it in an agreement. But the overage, typically you're trying to get that back to the consumer. So if I'm your buyer client, you might even try to, if my lender allows, try to rebate some of the money back to me. So that's another way. But call the hotline. The hotline's 803-712-3478. Anytime there's extra money on the listing side or on the buyer side, call the hotline. We can help you work through that, because that is something, if you're found in violation of the settlement, you could lose your settlement protection and your brokerage could lose your settlement protection. So it's a big deal. So just know if there's money left on the table, to call the hotline. Talk to your broker in charge, because all these answers we give, always talk to your broker in charge and brokerage attorney and call the hotline.
Those are good answers, because right now there's so many things that we have to keep up with, and that's why it's so important to do these legal updates and these legal podcasts, because it helps us stay up to date with all the information that we really need to know and makes us look very professional. I got another question. Sure. So with the property disclosure, what if there was a murder in a property, or what if someone says that house is haunted? What are we to do?
I'll flip that, Tiara, because we were talking before you got here. Tiara had a hotline about some kind of disclosure, kind of the psychological stigma versus physical. Tiara, how would you answer that if somebody called the hotline about...
We were just talking about that earlier. So if it's something psychological, let's say it's a ghost in there or something like that. Under South Carolina law, you don't have to disclose that. So, you don't legally have to disclose something psychological. You don't also have to disclose, let's say if someone died in their home, whatever the cause of that death is, you wouldn't necessarily have to disclose it. But sometimes we say, even if you don't have a legal requirement to disclose something, that it's better to let people know, because we have neighbors. And from the conversation earlier, it was not something wasn't disclosed, but then as soon as they get the house, a neighbor walks over and they're telling you, oh, did you know this happened at that house? And now you have clients who feel they've been misled, or that they weren't, having, it wasn't honest. So we always, even when you don't have to technically disclose something, like legally or all on the MLS or in writing, having those conversations sometimes can help you in the future with people being upset and trying to sue you over, well, you didn't tell, I wouldn't have bought the house if I would have known that. So some of those things are not legally required to be disclosed, but we would still just recommend calling the hotline and talking through the exact situation to see if it's something maybe that needs to have a further conversation about.
Well, that's good things to know, because sometimes we hear a lot of things and we don't know how to really go ahead and answer it or not answer it. So these are the things that's why we have you guys, and that's why we have to call the hotline. If in doubt, call the hotline. And see, another question I have is, what happens if a realtor doesn't want to follow the new rules post-settlement?
Yeah, so if everybody's been reading the news for the past few years, there was a gigantic nationwide seller class action lawsuit. And NAR and several brokers all paid a lot of money to settle this case, because if they didn't settle it, the judgment was going to be, millions and millions and millions of dollars. And there's lawsuits filed in South Carolina. And these trial lawyers, if there's a violation of that settlement, then you lose your protection and you can be sued. So that means, if you show a house without something in writing, a buyer agreement in writing, or you, do this overage wrong, you didn't have your buyer agreement state your compensation properly, you could lose your settlement protection, which is that's another member benefit. You're a member of the realtors, you're covered under the settlement by and large. But if you lose that settlement, now all of a sudden the trial lawyers, the nationwide trial lawyers, and even the South Carolina trial lawyers could sue you and your brokerage under a seller class action lawsuit. So do not break the rules. Call the hotline all the time.
Sounds good. We got to continue to stress. Call that hotline. Here's another question, because we're all into social media, and sometimes people get a little too free on what they say on social media. What are our rules with either fair housing, and then social media?
Right. So, in reference to fair housing, something that you want to be careful with is a lot of times it's well intentioned. So someone's not meaning to, use hate speech or that, but they're trying to describe a property, but they're using protected class categories to do so, which it could appear that they're favoring certain groups over another, which while they're not meaning it to, call you a name or something like that, it still can be seen as a violation. And an example of that is saying this is the perfect home for a family of 3 or a family with 2 children, just anything that's a preference. Because what if it's a couple without children at the moment and they really want this home and they're seeing that and they're like, oh, can only families stay there, or is that a preference? So it can be things like that. You want to be careful to just describe the property. It's a 2-bed, 2-bath, or 3-bedroom, 2-bath. You want to very spacious. If it's a big home, instead of saying ideal for large family, you would want to say 5-bedroom home, large backyard. Do things that describe the property and not the type of people that you would want in the home. So it's not seen as having a preference over one group or the other. When it comes to listings and preparing a property to be viewed, you want to have it neutral. You don't want to have things that symbols of hate that can, kind of show, oh, well, I might not want to go in that house. Or even, of course, you can have religious things in your home, but you want to make it as neutral as possible and try to attract the most people you can to the property. And then they put their touches on it. You don't want to make them feel like you have a favoritism towards one group or another. So that's something with fair housing and social media. But also another thing with social media is Article 15, which states that realtors shall not make false or misleading statements about other real estate professionals or their business. So we get this a lot if someone's upset. Let's say, I called you and you didn't answer the phone and I lost out on a deal and I feel like, that's your fault. Jennifer never answers the phone and I go write that on Facebook. I'm not working with any more agents from that company. They do business this way, kind of making those all out statements to maybe it's one experience you had, but you're not allowed to say things about someone that could be false or misleading. The truth is a defense, but pretty much anytime you're, going back and forth with someone on social media or saying negative things, that's when we see those ethics complaints come in. So even those private groups out there, it may be Columbia Realtors, a closed group that even I don't have access to, we get the screenshots and, we get the complaints and then it's right there in black and white. And a lot of the times the people are just, apologetic that they even posted that and it was kind of a heat of the moment type of thing and they regret venting on social media. So be careful with that.
Yes, but as realtors, we all abide by the code of ethics, and that's what makes us so professional to make sure that we don't get into any problems with any group.
Yeah, I would just, on top of what Tiara said, the Real Estate Commission and the state government have given some help for realtors in this area too, because, Lindsay Jackson Hutto, our lobbyist, and Austin Smallwood, our lawyer who monitors the Real Estate Commission. The Real Estate Commission has done some things to help with advertising on social media. So I know you go by Jennifer, but some Jennifers use Jenny. So there's a way to register your nickname. So you want to use your license name in your advertising, and you work for Coldwell Banker Realty, so you'd have that in your advertising. And then the newest thing, they just had an alert about advertising. Because a lot of times realtors were using other people's listings. It's real easy to share on social media. The laws change where you can easily do that legally now. You just need written permission from the listing broker in charge saying, say I wanted to use your listing and say you're the broker in charge. I could get something in writing from you that says, hey, Byron King, you can use my listing on 3780 Fernandina Road, which is our address here. And then I can give you credit. It would have, a picture of the 3780 Fernandina Road, Columbia, South Carolina, courtesy of Jennifer Feliciano at Coldwell Banker Realty. So those things will help realtors stay out of trouble, because that was something realtors were doing a lot. They were using nicknames. They were using other posting, because it's real easy to post shares on Facebook. So it made it easy for us to do that and stay legal. Thanks, Real Estate Commission.
Yeah, well, that is a good thing to know, because sometimes I get asked if someone, another agent says, hey, can I borrow your listing and advertise it? So I just want to make sure that I as the agent and the seller and the company give permission for that? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't mention you want to obviously get the seller's permission and your broker's permission, because a lot of times what we get on the hotline is maybe you and the seller paid good money for professional video and photographs. You don't want somebody just driving by with an iPhone making a blurry picture. You want to make sure. So that's what you could do. Say, Byron, I might do that. Send me what you're going to post so I can see it. And then, like you said, get permission of your broker and your seller to do that. Good points.
Well, that is a good point. And I know you said that we should always use our legal name. So I guess I can't go by J-Flow, Jennifer
You could just
Feliciano.
make sure you register it, but yeah.
Okay, well, that's a good one. Also, nowadays, there's so many fraud things that are happening, either with AI and just so many scams. You know, how do we protect ourselves, and what do we need to know about it?
Yeah, so there is, like you said, a lot of different scams that are targeted involving real estate. One common one is a vacant land scam. And what that is it will be a piece of land that is unoccupied, and most of the time nothing is built on the land at this time. And the owner of the land often stay somewhere else. Either they may be in state, but oftentimes out of state. And then you will get contacted by the owner, quotation marks, of the property, and they'll say, you know, I want to list this land. I want to do it quick. Most of the times they want to do it quick. They can't meet you in person, but that doesn't mean automatically that's a scammer just because they don't want to meet in person. But that's some of the common denominators of that. And they'll have their documents. They'll have a driver's license, bank accounts, and it'll look official. This has gotten through attorneys' offices. But what happens, what's the scam part, is they're not the actual owners of the property that they say they're the owners of, which means you can't even have a listing agreement with them because they don't own the property, so they don't have the authority to list that land. And how you can, a tool that we've invested in and offer as a member benefit is called Forewarn. So I don't know if you want to hold up this little advertisement. So Forewarn is an app, and I'll talk about see if you've had any experience with it, but basically it's to run quick background checks on people for the purposes of our business. So let's say if you want to check all of your potential listing clients through this app, and that's something in your policies, then you can do that. Or let's say buyers that you want you to meet them out at a property for your safety, you know, as a woman, and let's say someone wants to go out to a property very far out, maybe it's later in the afternoon, it gets dark early. You just want to check to make sure they are who they say they are. It also shows any type of criminal records, things like that, to match the person with who they're saying they are for protection of our realtors members. So this is a safety tool to provide access for safer showings, but also to ensure that you're not getting caught up with the scams, because of course if something does go through and get sold, they're going to be looking at you as the real estate agent and your company when it's lawsuit time. So, you know, the scammer is probably going to be somewhere far away by the time the, actions are taken. And so they're going to be looking at the agent who listed this, what protocol did they go through, what documents did they review. So this is just something as one of your member benefits to hopefully help you. And have you had any experience using this app?
I've had good experience using the Forewarned, and I try to look up the buyers that I'm going to be meeting, which gives me helpful things so that I know that they are a real person and they are who they say they are. But now, I was curious. Am I allowed to look up and be nosy with my neighbors or try to see where maybe my favorite movie star lives? Can I do that with Forewarned?
That's a good question. No, that would be against the uses. You want to keep it within the business, and you kind of want to create a policy as your brokerage, just saying this is how we're going to use it, so it's something in writing, because you don't want to also, this can go into fair housing and discrimination. You don't want to just use it, let's say I'm only using it for people with certain last names or from certain backgrounds, but I'm not using it for everyone else. You want to use it universally, fairly, and non-discriminatorily, but you can't use it as a dating, to check people for your dating purposes or to look at your neighbors or celebrities.
Okay, well, good to know. Thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah, and then on the scam, the way it would work. So say Tiara is a landowner in Elgin or Lexington, and I'm a scammer. Say I'm in Russia, and I'm on the computer and I'm pretending to be Tiara, and I'll contact you and say I want to list this land. Say it's in Lexington. I want to sell it fast. So I want a cash deal, so low price. I'm Tiara. Here's my, and I'm sending you fake driver's license, fake everything. You can use forewarn, look up Tiara Pitts, and it'll tell you a phone number and address, or you can even look up tax records. And you can send a U.S. mail or one of these alternate contacts. Contact her, Tiara, hey, thanks for listing with me. And of course, Tiara's going to be like, what are you talking about? And then I'm the bad guy, and you can report me to the FBI.
Yeah, and that's why we are so fortunate to have these member benefits, because it just helps keep us out of trouble.
Yes.
So, and if in doubt, once again, call the hotline.
Yes, of course.
Also, let me see other things that we should know about for the good of the real estate industry.
Yeah, definitely. So one thing that's come up just over the weekend is this. I call it FinCEN. It's Financial Crime Enforcement Network. So it's been going back and forth to the courts, but what it is terrorists and drug dealers, they have a lot of dirty money, right? Mm-hmm. So they'll use real estate to launder money or even to invest their money. So in the way they do that, to hide that they're bad people, they'll use corporations, and it's hard for the federal government to figure out who owns that corporation and make the arrest. So FinCEN is a thing where everybody will register their corporate entities with the federal government. It's fairly simple to do. It doesn't cost any money. They basically want a database of, ABC Corporation belongs to Byron King, for example, at 3780 Fernandina Road. So it's been going back and forth with the courts. The latest update from the National Association of Realtors Legal last week was it's back on. Everybody needs to register their corporation. If you have a question, call the hotline, 803-712-3478. The other thing, let's see, I'm looking at my list here. Do not call. We've been getting, anytime you're making cold calls, or especially if you're using an automated dialer, call the hotline, because there's some new laws about that. You want to make sure people aren't on the do not call registry. And then NAR Legal announced a big win with floor plans. So a lot of times when you're marketing, you may sketch a floor plan. So what happened was in a part of the United States, the architect sued the realtor saying, hey, you infringed on my intellectual property by using the sketch of my interior design of this house. NAR won, funded a lawsuit for many years. They won the lawsuit. So part of it basically says, if you're going to use a sketch, just use the interior sketch of the property. Have your seller tell you to do that. And never just use somebody, don't take the architect's plans and just upload them into the MLS, because somebody owns that intellectual property, unless you get written permission from that architect to use those plans. So the floor plan, call the hotline if you have any question. That was a win for NAR. Do not call is a hot topic. FinCEN's a hot topic. Tiara, any hot topics on your end?
I have a hot topic.
Yes.
Well, or maybe not so much a hot topic, but I just always like to make sure that I let people know when they're working with different cultures. There are great things about working with a variety of nationalities, because it enriches the client experiences. When you know more and you understand about their culture, they feel respected. Mm-hmm. It allows them to understand what their needs are when you understand where they're coming from. And also, one thing that I know a lot of times people don't realize to tell clients that are not from this country and are buying a home, because a lot of times BOs or teachers and a lot of different professions are brought in to work here, and then they want to buy a house, but then their taxes are always going to be at a 6% assessment rather than the 4% assessment. And I always try to educate the people and agents to let people of other nationalities who are here and may not have all the documentation that the counties need, because they're going to be assessed at the 6% tax rate, and they're going to be pretty shocked when that comes in. So that's something I kind of wanted to give for the good of the cause for my fellow agents to be aware of that. And if they got any questions, feel free to call me. I don't know everything, but at least I know that they need certain documentation in order to get the 4% assessment. And a lot of times they'll be shocked when they don't get to do that and don't get that opportunity at the counties.
Yeah, and for 6% owners, that situation, any 6% owners is important for realtors. If you do a deal, the 6%er in 2025, make sure you talk about it closing, and then I'll follow up, because before January 30th of next year, they can apply. If there's an assessable transfer of interest, the Realtor Association lobbied us to help with kind of the Act 388 unintended consequences. There's a way that they can reduce the assessed value by 25%. So it's not a perfect solution, but it is a discount. And that, the way property taxes are figured, it's assessment ratio 6% times the millage times the assessed value. So the law says if you're a 6% or even that situation you talked about, or any it's a second home, vacation home, it's some sort of commercial property, there's a good chance they can fill out the form from the county and get a discount on their assessed value of 25%, which should lower their tax bill a little bit. And the counties aren't always the easiest to find that form. So, it's a way for the realtor to say, hey, Mr. or Miss Seller, Miss or Miss Buyer, in 2025, you bought a 6% property here in Richland County or Kershaw County. Here's the form you need to fill out to try to get that discount on your assessable transfer of interest.
Yeah, that's very good information, because we all really kind of need to make sure when we have that conversation with our client, the attorney has that conversation at closing, and they're so overwhelmed with so much information that they're being told, and then they're just so excited about their property, they forget about that piece until the bill comes in, and then they're shocked. And we don't want anyone to be upset at us as realtors. We want to make sure that we offer a great experience and keep them just happy so that they can continue to refer us. So, I've got another question here. And, I wasn't very aware of the realtor license plate, but could one of you guys tell me a little bit more about it?
Yes. So this is the American Dream home ownership, the American Dream license plate. So anytime someone buys this, and it has our realtor logo here, and then it says home ownership there. I don't know if you guys can see it from the camera, but anytime someone buys this, a percentage of the money goes into a fund, which we manage. And at the end of each year, all of the money that's in the fund generated by the sale of this license plate, we then distribute that to the different Habitat for Humanities throughout the state. And every habitat that applies receives a portion. So we'll split the whole fund up by the amount of habitats that apply. And then they go on to use it for building affordable housing. And it has to be for affordable housing. So a lot of times it's, a disabled person or a veteran or a family, just different situations of people who need housing, and it helps them. So that is something. So habitats, you guys can apply for that every year around, it's in the fall is when those applications end, and the money's distributed before, the end of the year. So November, December timeframe. So the more we sell of this, the more money we would have to give out to those habitats, and the more homes that get built. So it has to be, the money is used on a new build. Okay. So a new construction, of course, we know affordable housing is an issue, and then it's a housing shortage. So that's just a little something that we do to help with that issue.
Yes, and I love this license plate. I don't have this one.
Yeah. We need you to
Shame
get
on
it.
me. But here's a question: Can I personalize it? Because I have a personalized license plate, and I don't want to give up myself for you unless I could put it on one of these. That's what I kind of want to find out, or have to find out if that's possible. Then I would definitely be all in.
Yeah, you can personalize it. Our CEO, Nick Tremitis, has a personalized license plate.
So
there you go.
There we go.
No excuse. We're going to need you to get that this year.
Definitely will. Yes, definitely will. Because every time I see a fellow agent and they drive by with this, and I look at them like, I am so proud to see that. And,
yes.
I do want to join and get mine personalized as well. So we'll see what happens from there.
Yes, awesome.
So any other questions or any topic that could come up that would be for the good of the cause?
Yeah, this one has come up on the hotline, and you've seen it probably. When you're showing a property, you have to have a written agreement, a written buyer agreement. Unless you have to have a written agreement. So that could be the listing agreement if you're working for the seller, right. Like say Caldwell Banker Realty has the listing. You can show customer buyers, or dual agency, designated agency. So you would have a buyer agreement. or you'd have the listing agreement, and then the real estate commission, because a lot of people were they were going on the internet, they'd call the hotline, hey, Byron, I found this form on the internet. It's a $0 showing agreement. Can I use it? And I'm like, I don't know who wrote it. I don't know what's in it. But the real estate commission, we talked about them helping with marketing using listings on Facebook. They also help with 110, the real estate brokerage relationship form. They basically have said, they put the settlement language in there that said, because it's a work for free, it's no dollars. It says, but commission's not set by law, it's fully negotiable, which the settlement requires. So if you have somebody that comes in for the weekend and they're like, say I come in and you try to get me to sign a buyer agency agreement, sometimes buyers are like, hey, that's great, Jennifer, I really want to get your services as a client. I want you to give me customer client level services. I might sign it. Or I might say, Jennifer, I'm just here for the weekend. I just want to go look at some houses. And you could say, Byron, I can put you in a buyer agency agreement. We could limit it just to these houses just this weekend. No, I don't want to do that. And you still want to work with me. You could, because you're going to have to give me that form anyway and explain what your services are. But you're not earning money. You might be working for free. I might go to a different brokerage, but because it doesn't have a money in there, until you get something with money in there, you wouldn't get paid. But it's a way for those buyers that are, you've had difficult buyers probably, or they're just nervous. They don't want to sign something. They just met you and they don't want to sign up. Because if you heard like Rhea Smith talk about her classes last year, she's talking about like dating versus marriage. Like you sign, you're feeling really bound to that brokerage. I might not want to marry Coldwell Brokerage Realty, but I might go out and look at some houses with a 110. So that 110 and the 130 to show the properties or something that comes up. And then if I can talk about our hotlines, this might spur some issues. So our last legal podcast got snowed out in January. So Alan Lightly compiles our hotlines from our data each month. So you get the December and January, and they're very similar. So I'll just do kind of the top three. So forms, number one, that's almost always our top one. License law is number two, and professionalism's number three. So it's always forms, license law, and professionalism. Back in December, like things that were coming up, settlement, you've been asking questions about the settlement. That was number four. State laws and advertising, that's what we're talking about a lot of times with the Facebook advertising on social media, other people's listings, getting written buyer permission, written broker in charge permission rather. Compensation, that's always a topic. Tiara talked about disclosure issues with the psychological stigma. Due diligence, because you use the Columbia contract, the CMLS contract in the state. They're very similar, but different ways due diligence is in both of those right now. Basically gives the buyer an ability to look at the property before they close and make a decision to go or no go.
Do they always have to put in a due diligence amount? Well, if you use the state contract, you do. We don't have that in the local contract. But do they always have to put an amount?
I recommend you put an amount just because what can happen if you don't have an amount? Theoretically, a buyer could go put contracts on 10 houses. So having an amount in there, maybe it makes it's kind of almost like earnest money. It gets them in the mindset. But I understand like first-time home buyers might not have the money. So there's no perfect way to write a contract. So like you said, the CMLS, the Columbia market is, I think it's 10 days, no charge due diligence, right? And ours could be that way. You can make it 10 days or 1 day or 100 days, and you can make it $0 or some dollar amount. I like to see an amount in there. And we had a hotline come up on a very expensive property. Maybe you have a lawyer change the agreement, even in Columbia. So say you're in a multi-million-dollar deal, you might want due diligence paid up front or an amount of due diligence, so your attorney could add that into the contract. Because we get the calls where the deal falls through and then the buyer refuses to pay the due diligence. The reason our due diligence is paid on the back end is mainly for, say I'm a first-time home buyer, I have a lot of cash, and say the seller's a villain, they breach. And I've already paid the money to them. So ours is always paid on the back end. But especially on a big deal, I always get nervous just because our contract's mainly used for the average house, the average consumers. But on an especially big deal, you may want to have your broker in charge and your brokerage attorney look at some different options for the contract to make them stronger for whoever you represent. If you represent the seller, that's what I was talking about. But if you're on the buyer side, it'd be different.
Yeah, because one thing is, we have the right to use both contracts, and especially those fellow realtors who are closer to the borderline of North and South Carolina, they have to be very, very careful if they choose whatever contracts they choose, to make sure they understand all the terms and clearly have their client understand, because no one wants to end up in front of a professional standard board.
Yeah, and both all the associations have training. We can do training. Austin Smallwood's kind of he's our forms committee liaison. Me, Tiara, or Austin can come and do a Zoom or come to your office and talk about the state form, and then vice versa. The attorneys that drafted it at your local CCRA, I'm sure Gary Pickering or another one of them would be happy to give a class on that. Then just wrapping up from December, we had agency. We're getting audits. We're getting calls about audits. So LLR is out auditing brokerages. So that's been a question. And LLR's intent is to audit everybody. So they're coming in there. And the commissioners have said they're not trying to catch anybody. They're trying to make sure everybody's lifted up. And if there's a problem, they get it handled. And then property management. So, and then this last month, pretty much the same. I'm looking through if anything changed. Talking about audits, brokerage, office management. Earnest money has come back up on the hotline.
Yeah. That's in reference to earnest money. The only way the earnest money can be released is by a mutual agreement by the parties. So both parties, buyer and seller, signing off saying this is how it'll be distributed. It can be split or it can go to one party or the other. We have several options on our forms where you would just check the box and say how you're going to split it, or by a judgment, like taking it to court and then them telling you how that money is going to be split. Or you can also have an agreement drafted by an attorney that says, if this happens, then this person gets the money. And that would be on the front end, that type of agreement, an earnest money disbursement would be, signed by all parties. So it's never going to be a situation where someone's just, we get a lot of calls, I should get the earnest money back because they didn't disclose that this is a bad roof. It's nothing in statute that's going to say that, where we would be able to say, yes, you can't, it's still going to be the same situation where it has to be signed off by all parties, or it's going to be some litigation, maybe even some mediation. You can take that route to, we have trained mediators for the Realtors Association. So that can be a way, but it's never going to kind of be an entitlement to the earnest money, as that's a common misconception that, you did this wrong, I should get all the earnest money back. That's not in statute for us to be able to give that advice. So sometimes people are upset about that. Because even if they're in the right about what they're talking about, maybe it was a non-disclosure issue. It's nothing that says when you don't disclose something, then, the other party gets the earnest money.
Right. Yeah. So, question. And I know a lot of our viewers know how to access our legal our forms, but where should they go in case we have new viewers who are looking? How do they access all the forms and the Spanish library as well?
Just Googling South Carolina Realtors Forms will get you there. And first, you'll see our forms library, which is all of our forms. Those are the legally binding documents. The Spanish forms is going to be, if you scroll down,
all the way to the bottom.
To the bottom, which
Yes.
is sometimes people can't find it, but that is, you go all the way down, it'll say Spanish forms translations. And of course, we have that disclaimer that these forms are not to be signed. And I think we removed the signature portion off of those forms anyway. So you can tell the difference. With the other forms, it'll be more expansive library. And of course, you can use that on your vendors like Zip Forms. Whereas our Spanish forms, you can find those directly on the website, but they're also on the vendors' websites as well, just not able to be signed.
Now, do we also have another language other than the Spanish contract?
Not yet, but that is something that we're looking at as needs increase and as, we look at our population and different communities that we service. If you have a suggestion of forms, then that can be something that the Diversity Committee, which I'm sitting with the chair, of course, can look into. So we're always looking into ways to expand. And then, of course, as we update these forms for things like the settlement, then we would update those Spanish translations as well. So if you see something not available, it could be because we're in a transition period of getting that updated version of that form available for you.
Which I'm just grateful that it took many years for us to finally get the Spanish translated form. So I'm just grateful for that as being one of the member benefits that we also offer to everyone. Kind of wrapping it up, I just wanted to say, Byron, I love your tie. It's got some purple in it. I got purple
Purple head to
today.
toe.
What does purple mean Tiara?
Yes, so purple is all about RPAC, which I think Jennifer can tell us what is RPAC and why should realtors invest.
So, yes, I heavily believe in RPAC. RPAC is advocacy for our home ownership, and also we advocate towards the property rights for our clients as well. So, this is something that we should all invest in. And I know sometimes people may not know a lot about it. I'm dressed in purple today. I know you can't see my sneakers, but I got some RPAC sneakers as well. And if you become a major investor, you will have the opportunity to get those beautiful purple sneakers. So just be on the lookout when you start seeing all these agents with their purple sneakers. That's what it is. We're all investing in RPAC, just as you all should.
I have to do a couple advertisements. Mike Christ, he's the producer. Sharon Stone's our communications director. She wanted me to mention, and Terry, you can give me some more information on this. Sharon wanted to mention these posts you made for Black History, so kind of talk about that for a second. Please.
Yes, so we are in Black History Month. Happy Black History Month to everyone. And about last week, I had the honor, or maybe the week before last, I had the honor of sitting down with two Black realtors who are trailblazers and have made history. One is our president, Keon Aldrich,
Yes.
who is our first Black president of South Carolina Realtors. So super excited. And then the other person was Nancy Johnson, who is a veteran. She has been a real estate agent and realtor for many decades, I think 4 decades.
Yes, I know
So-
she's been in it for over 30
Yes,
years.
exactly.
Yes.
She has so many accolades. She has a Nancy Johnson Day in Columbia. She's in the E.R. Wilder
wow.
Hall of Fame. And she really, she was the first Black person to be hired by her company when she, around the 70s or 80s. So that podcast is up on our YouTube channel right now. And we've done a podcast every year. So you can go back and look at the old ones as well. And just celebrating them, their accomplishments, and talking about pushing Black home ownership forward, which is low right now in comparison to other groups. So that was about that. And we just have a lot of content. We have a whole, Mike put us a whole tab of all of our diversity related content that you can find there. And super excited to continue to talk to them and continue our relationships.
Which I have to say, I have really enjoyed looking at some of those podcasts from those trailblazing African-American realtors and all that they had gone through to open up the doors for the rest of us to continue to help
Yes.
any and all people who are looking to become homeowners. Now, another group also that's very important in the Black History Month is NAHREP.
Yes, NAHREP is the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, which is the African American counterpart to a group like NAHREP. So both of those organizations were designed for the specific purposes of improving their membership. So NAHREP is about African American home ownership and just getting that home ownership rates up, and also the communities like the lenders, the realtors, the attorneys collaborating together.
Yes.
So those were designed when different groups couldn't be a part of our realtor association that we're all sitting at the table here. So they made their own group to still continue to fight for that. And NAHREP also helped to get the Fair Housing Act passed. So they're pretty instrumental in that. So that it's important to join those groups if you want to learn more, attend meetings, attend conferences. I was able to attend some conferences with Jennifer, and it's just a good way to network, but to also learn more specific cultural things about different groups and how to service clients better.
Yeah. So they have great informative meetings. As you said, they offer you the resources so that you know what to do or where to go to find the information you need to help any particular group. And I'll tell you at the end, we all have great parties.
Yes.
I've gone to the NAHREP party. I've gone to the NAHREP parties. They're all amazing parties.
Very fun. And if you want to learn more, you can Google those acronyms, and they each have a website. They also each release a report each year: the state of American home ownership, the state of Black home ownership, the state of LGBTQ home ownership. That's another group that just releases the statistics. So you can see, if you want to see things in numbers and see the business argument for working with these different groups, that is where you'll find the information in their reports that are released yearly.
Yes, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of information that also not only for us to use, but also the lending associations and a lot of the organizations use it to get data on particular groups, because as the state of the Hispanic homeownership also puts out one of those reports, which extremely informative in any of those organizations that you need. So
Yes.
yeah.
Sharon Stone, Communication Director. This one hit home with you, Jennifer. She wants to remind everybody to do the T360 SCR survey. So if you've been in governance, you know how important it is to get the members. This is where the members can give us feedback on the association. They offer gift cards. If you fill this survey out, you can win a gift card. So talk about how surveys, have you done a survey yet?
I have. I haven't done this one right now, and I promise I'm gonna do it today. But yes, I have done those because they try to get different points of views from agents on what topics are important and what things they need to be paying attention to really kind of get a more strategic plan on how to move forward and continue to increase awareness in any type of anything that has to do with real estate, to help us strive to become better realtors.
Yes.
And then my last commercial, and then I'll turn it to Tiara and yourself. You can close this out, Jennifer. But Sharon Stone, Communication Director, want to remind everybody, we're going to have a legal conference, first one ever. It'll be at Wild Dunes, September 17th and 18th. It'll be, Austin Smallwood calls it Forums Con. That name's catching on, but it'll be a legal conference. We hope to have, Tiara was talking to U.S. HUD today. Maybe we can get some of those speakers. NAR's sending a lawyer. NAR's got a new general counsel, John McCloskey. They hired a new Kenny Austin attorney. And Nia Duggins, that did one of our podcasts, she's already committed to being in Charleston for this legal conference. And then, Darren, any last thoughts? And we'll let Jennifer close us out.
Yes. Last thoughts are, don't forget to get your 2.5 hours of ethics training and your 2 hours of fair housing training, which are a requirement of your realtor membership. And luckily for you guys, I or Byron or Austin can teach you those courses. So be on the lookout for when your local board is going to be hosting those courses. Or if you have a larger brokerage and you want us to just come to your brokerage directly, that is also an option. So make sure you reach out to us, and thank you for having us. And I will let Jennifer close us out.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to both for allowing me to be here with you today. And, at the end, we all are striving to be the best realtors that we can. We thank you for keeping us straight. We thank you for keeping us informed. And just wanted to say thank you. Gracias. Muchas gracias a todos. Thank you, everyone, for having us today. And hopefully you've enjoyed this podcast. And until the next time.